Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is how to encourage diversity in the hiring process. My name is David Gates, and I am the Director of Online Education here at GrantStation, and I'll be your host. Now, for many organizations, it can be challenging to attract and hire candidates from diverse backgrounds. Fortunately, we have Sneha Shah with us today to provide you with practical strategies you can use to implement a diverse hiring process. Sneha is the president of Maneva Group, a minority and women-owned national executive search firm focused on the social sector. And after recruiting for 18 years and hiring over 1,000 people, she has become known for her insightful techniques to promote diversity and equity in the hiring process. And today she's going to share her expertise with you and help you encourage diversity in your hiring process. So with that, please welcome Sneha Shah.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you, GrantStation, for having us be part of your audience here. And so, like David said, my name is Sneha, and I'll introduce myself in just a little bit, but I'd love to know who's in the audience. And so if you could chat in for me and let me know if you're the hiring manager, if you're an HR professional, if you have a different background and you're just here to learn about hiring practices. So I'd love to be able to add in any context that would be applicable to you. So let me know who's in the audience here. Oh, great.
Yeah, it looks like some people are chiming in there. Yeah.
I see some consultants and DEI professionals and ED. Wonderful. Welcome. Sometimes participate in job posting and interviews. Okay, great. Hiring coordinators. Okay, great. So many of them are directly hiring managers or involved in a hiring plan. And I see a couple that have DEI involvement, a board member. Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm so happy to have you guys here. And next, I'd like you to chat in for me just what you'd like to learn in this seminar today, what kind of drew you and attracted you, and something tangible that you'd like to walk away with to make sure that we address that. General information, okay. And recruiting has so many facets. So I want to make sure that you know what we'll address, and I'll cover that. And from job descriptions to postings to how do you do interviews, set up an interview process, how do you create a candidate profile? Like there's so many dimensions of recruiting. And today what we'll cover is really on how do you attract and how do you incentivize diverse candidates to your position, to your organization. Okay, some people are chiming in now, just best practices, where to post. We're definitely going to cover that, Felicia. Thank you for that. Where to find diverse board members. That'll get covered in our job postings, where to post. Hiring language and inclusiveness, that is definitely something we're going to cover. Alma, great. Avoiding bias in job description. Joanna, you're hitting it right on the nail. That's something we're going to cover as well. Outreaching strategies. Okay, some great, perfect. So let's get started. Just a little bit about Maneva Group. So as David mentioned, we are a women and minority-owned national executive search firm, and our niche is in the social sector. So we support nonprofits, philanthropy, B Corps, any mission-driven organization in the United States, we support that. We're starting to branch out with some international NGOs, but we provide full cycle recruitment, so from job description to job offer and everything in between. And I would say that our niche has become really, we specialize in advancing either women or people of color in a leadership capacity. In the last 18 months, the folks that we've placed have about 80%, 83% have been either women or people of color. And that's just the outreach that we have to really highlight those candidates in leadership positions. And so my name is Sneha Shah. I've been doing this for about 18 years. I come from a for-profit background and a nonprofit background, so we utilize both those skills to target the right candidates for the organizations that we serve. And my partner here, who's on the call as well, Romney Edwards, she's an executive recruiter as well, and she's been doing this for 12 years. She has a strong background with military and in for-profit business, and now she's transitioned over the last several years to servicing nonprofit organizations like yours. So let me cover what today is not about first, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Because recruiting is a spectrum from sourcing candidates, creating a job profile, deciding if this is the right time to hire, to actually facilitating the process and extending the offer. We're not going to make a decision today on like how you should decide if it's the right time to hire, who you should hire, what the job role should be, how do you build your employer brand so that you attract candidates. Just wanted to cover what we will address today, and why we're here is how do you promote diversity and equity in your hiring practices. So we're going to cover 3 practical strategies. One is how to use inclusive language in your job description. It starts there. Like, how are you removing any barriers that candidates may have from applying to your candidates for your role? 2, where to source candidates. It's the number one thing I have clients ask me, like, where should we find talented, qualified candidates who reflect maybe the population that your organization serves, or you just want to bring diversity onto your team. And so it's the number one question I get, where should I source? So we're going to cover that. I'm going to give you a few examples of different job boards, depending on the type of position that you're seeking. And then last is, how do you eliminate bias from the interview process? You know, I can't highlight that there's not a magic wand. There's not like a super duper job board that you can post on and you'll get this incredible diverse candidate pool for your position. But I do believe if you set up the right process, your interview process is set up that eliminates bias, your job description is inclusive enough so that enough candidates think, yeah, I could do that role, and they apply to it. And then you have diversity in the different job boards you advertise on. All of those things in combination will help you get a better candidate pool. And this is applicable for board members as well as candidates. So for those who are looking to diversify your board members, the same process is applicable. So I want you guys to type in for me in the chat, just what open positions are you seeking? I want to make sure, if applicable, I can incorporate some of those job positions and specific details about them. So if you have a current open position and there's a specific job title that you're seeking, if you'll put that in the chat, and that way maybe we could address that directly as well. Okay, volunteer coordinator, development associate, board member, education and outreach coordinator. Okay. So several like coordinator, administrator positions. Okay, a family case manager, field coordinator, mentoring specialist. Okay, so they're very varied in different areas. Director of finance and operation, board members, great. Library associate. Off the bat, as soon as I see the titles, at least I can tell you that the titles are neutral. It's one of the things we'll cover, but none of them are very, excluding a gender or implying that only a certain profile is capable of doing the role. So kudos for the job title so far that I'm seeing. Great analyst, great, perfect. Well, let's talk about diversity, because I want to make sure diversity has so many different facets to it. So for some organizations, they may want to diversify and bring in some for-profit talent into their nonprofit business. For board members, you may want some for-profit background into the board just to bring that diversity. Diversity isn't just about race. And I really want to highlight that. Most of my clients that come to me, they may say, I want diversity in terms of race because of the team makeup we have or the population we serve. But really, diversity can span so many different areas, whether you want diversity in terms of age on your team, maybe you want diversity in terms of gender on your team, or how someone identifies and in what beliefs that they identify with. Sometimes it's their personal identification in terms of maybe a political viewpoint that they have, or in certain issue area, social impact area that they identify with. And so really first, as an organization, define what diversity means to you and what you're looking for, and make sure that you communicate that with your hiring manager. And I see we have lots of hiring professionals on the call. So make sure you know what your team is looking for so that you cast a wide enough net to attract different profiles to apply for your position. Now, the first thing is about job descriptions. So most people, I know that we love using AI. You're going to go on ChatGPT, or you may go in and type in a sample job description for, let's say, director of finance and operations or a development associate. And you may get a sample template, and that's a good starting point, but don't just copy paste that, because it's so important that your job description is really tailored and attracts the right person that you want for the role. Now, our job descriptions are the first impression that a candidate's going to have. So they really matter. Without talking to someone from your organization, without knowing anything about your work and your impact, this is your first touch point with the candidate. So the thoughtfulness and the intentionality that you put into that job description is really going to attract that right person for the role. So take the sample job description that you may have that you got from ChatGPT or online Google search, but now let's really make it robust. Let's make it really personalized to your organization, because for all candidates, it's their first interaction with you. If you just copy paste the job description, you're going to send a message to your candidates that, one, it's a standard run-of-the-mill kind of organization. There's not a lot of thought behind, who they want. They may be scrapped for time, maybe energy, maybe resources. And so they're trying to do the bare minimum. And really, for the candidates, you want to really ignite this sense of, there's something interesting here. There's something thoughtful here. There's something that I really want to be a part of here. And they may not know exactly what yet, but just with the presentation and with the thoughtfulness, that energy is going to get communicated through. And so that first impression is so critical, and I can't highlight. If you can personalize it and make it intentional, it'll give you tenfold results. Now, I think of a candidate hiring process as a sales process. So I'm always telling my clients, organizations that hire us, is you've got a candidate to say yes from reading your job description 3 times. So when they read about your organization, when they read about the job description, and maybe when they read about the responsibilities or the qualification, you want the candidate to say, yes, that sounds like me. Yes, I can see myself doing that role. Yes, I have most of the qualifications that the job description stating. You really want to convey to the candidates to say, I think I belong here. I think I can do this. I fit here. But you've got to look at your candidates like customers. You want to sell to them, because remember, all candidates have choices. You're not the only employer out there. You're not the only person that they're looking at from an employment perspective. And so how much of a service, how easy you make that interview process, the application process, that's how much easier it's going to be for that candidate to go, I want to work here, making it streamlined for them. So think of candidates really as your customers, because you want them to say yes to you as much as you are saying yes to them. One person in the audience I saw in the notes talked about inclusive job description. So let's talk about that briefly. So first, having gender neutral title. So sometimes we've done things a certain way. An organization may be used to calling the position the same thing over and over time again, but just take a moment and just evaluate your titles. Make sure that they're gender neutral, and you're not having an unconscious bias saying, I'm looking for a salesman versus a sales executive, right? I saw development associate, which is great, but being mindful that our titles are gender neutral so that we can attract all types of personalities, all types of identification of candidates who want to apply for your position. The second is being gender neutral in your pronouns. And sometimes this goes really absentmindedly. If you've had a person in that prior position and they may have associated themselves as a he or him, or she and her, or they and them. And sometimes when you're writing the job description really quickly, you may say something like, and he will be responsible for doing X, Y, Z, or she may be responsible for doing this, or we expect them to do this. Being mindful to make sure that our language is as universal and as neutral as possible, because remember, it's a sales process and your job description is the first step. So you want a candidate to go, when they said he could do this, then you're only targeting one profile who identifies as he or him, and then only they'll say in their head, oh yeah, that sounds like me. I could do that job. Versus if your language is something that say, they would do this role, they would be expected to raise, X amount of dollars in revenue. Now you're having several personalities, several profiles saying in their head, I could do that role. That sounds like me. You don't want to unconsciously eliminate a candidate or have a process where someone says, that's not me, because we're casting a wide net. And that's a big part of attracting diverse candidate. You're casting a wide net of having all types of personalities, all types of profiles actually apply for your position. The next is having gender neutral adjectives. I'm a big proponent that you should tell a story. You should describe the type of candidate that you're looking for. And adjectives are the best way to paint a story. So if you're looking for someone who's decisive versus strong or superior, certain words, and you can Google this, but certain words have an affinity to being more feminine inclined or being more masculine. And so being mindful that the job description that you're creating is neutral, but still conveys the actual qualities that you want in that person. So I'm not telling you dilute it. I'm not telling you to sugarcoat it. If you need a strong personality to be in charge of your director of finance and accounting, then you may use the words like analytical, and you may use the words of being detail oriented. Those are, they tend to be more right brain types of personality. And that's what you're looking for. You can use those words. I just want to make sure that I highlight here, as much as you can keep it gender neutral adjectives, then you'll attract both types of personalities. I want to highlight here that research shows that women will only apply for a position if they feel like they meet all 100%, every single criteria that you've listed in the job description, versus male candidates will apply even if they think they have about 60% fit to the candidate profile that you're looking for. And so it's really important that you don't put extra fluff, you don't put extra things in there that are nice to have. Put the things that are required for your job in the job description, because you want to keep your audience open. You want to attract those that identify as women and those people who identify as male and anyone else that have other identification. But please know that, and I've seen this over and over again in my experience, women tend to not apply if they don't feel like they have every single criteria that's listed in the job description. And that one point, I've actually encouraged all of my clients to start including in their job description, and I'll show you an example. But you can add a line to your job description, making it clear that a candidate doesn't need to meet every single qualification you've listed, because some of them could be nice to have, some of them could be a plus, some are strongly recommended. So you can modify your language to put kind of priorities, like this is a must-have versus this is a nice-to-have. This would be great, a cherry on top if someone had that qualification. Next, as a way to attract diverse candidates, it would be great if your job description included your company's statement on what is your values around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if your organization has any kind of value statement, a proposition, even if it's in works, you could put a one-liner, and it really indicates to the candidates reading it that the company values this. They want candidates that reflect the same philosophy, and they want to attract candidates who thrive, and they're looking for environments where diversity is promoted, encouraged, and it's a must keep. It's not just a nice to have, but they really, the organization values it. And last is, travel and hybrid expectation. So as we've transitioned from COVID, lots of positions that used to be remote, maybe now they're going to hybrid, maybe organizations are okay having a travel component to it. If you could add a little color, the more information you add about what your travel requirements are or your hybrid opportunity is, then that'll attract a bigger audience who will say, oh, yes, I can do that, or no, I can't do that. You don't want someone to eliminate your job position because there's not clarity around what travel expectations you have. Maybe you only expect the candidate to come in once every quarter to your office, or once every other month, or maybe you have an expectation the candidate comes to work in your office 1 week out of a quarter. Those things a candidate will process and they'll say, oh, I can make that happen, whether they're a single parent or they have a nucleus family where their partner also travels. They can work out the details if you give a little color to your expectation for travel and hybrid. If you just keep it vague, then some people may say, oh, I definitely know I can't do that. I can't travel because I have XYZ commitment, or I share custody, or XYZ. You don't want anything to eliminate a candidate just from the job description process. And so the whole purpose of this slide is just to give you some examples of things that you could modify in your current job description that'll help you reach a diverse candidate pool. Next is when you're just doing a job description, a generic job description that you get from the internet, a lot of times information about the organization is missing. And being in the nonprofit sector, servicing clients solely in the social sector, I have to tell you that the thing that drives most people in this sector is the mission. It's the compelling reason why they join an organization. Yes, they want the compensation to be fair. Yes, they want a thriving environment. They're collaborative with their coworkers. But really, most people in the social sector are driven by a purpose that's more than themselves, something that really improves the world. It leaves an impact that's lasting more than themselves. And so for any job description, take a look at your current one. If you don't have a compelling story about your organization somewhere in the job description, my recommendation is to have it right at the beginning. Some people have it at the bottom, but brag about your organization, about your mission, your values, your impact that you're having, what the future of your organization may look like. It doesn't have to be something so grandiose and you have to get your communication team's approval, but even a synopsis, a couple lines about your organization. You want candidates, when they're reading the job description, the first yes that you want from a sales perspective is for them to say, yes, I want to work for this organization. Their mission sounds compelling, it seems fulfilling, and I would really enjoy being part of this team. And so first, look at your job description, make sure there's some language around your organization. Next is there's a lot of things that are unnecessary barriers to entry for candidates. So what I mean by that is there's certain processes that organizations have in place that make it difficult for applicants to put their name in the hat or feel like that they're qualified in that role. This is one of the main reasons the diverse candidates are either saying, no, this isn't applicable for me. I don't meet all the criterias. And so take a look at your job descriptions and your process to see if any of these exist. So first is cover letter. I'm old school. I came from a generation where cover letters were a must. I like reading them. I like reading the compelling whys behind candidate wanting that position. But nowadays, cover letters have been antiquated. Sometimes having that extra process for candidates to have to submit a cover letter in addition to your resume can be a turnoff. And they're saying, if I can't apply within a couple minutes, I don't want this position. Now, from an organization's perspective, you could say, if someone's not willing to make an effort to write a compelling why, then we don't want to entertain them for our organization. They're both fair point of view. I just want you to discuss with your team if the cover letter is relevant. And if you use them, then give candidates a specific question to address in the cover letter. So don't let it be a general cover letter, because most of the time candidates are going to copy paste things from their resume, or they're going to copy paste things from their LinkedIn. And so it's going to be redundant. So for you as the hiring professional, you're going to spend extra time just reviewing resume and cover letter, and sometime reviewing their LinkedIn, and all the information is majority going to be the same. And so from a candidate's perspective, the cover letter sometimes can be a turnoff. And so just be mindful, if you want to use them, make a specific tailored question that they answer that you can use as part of your vetting process. Next is college degrees. Now, lots of positions require a traditional 4-year bachelor's or a master's or graduate degree for their role. And look at your position. If your role doesn't meet a 4-year college degree, you don't have to put that language in there. Or if you want to keep it in there, you can just say that it's a nice to have. It's a plus to have. It's not required. You don't want to eliminate candidates who may have extensive working experience in the field, but they didn't get to go through a traditional four-year university route. So know that college degrees and the requirement from it have been changing the last several years, and lots of organizations are going away from having it as a prerequisite for every role. Be more selective in which role it is applicable and it's required, and it'll help them do that role. And for which role, it could be supplemented. If someone didn't have that college degree, you would be fine if they had, I'm making this up, but like 3 to 5 years of working experience in a specific sector within the nonprofit field. Next is years of experience. I sometimes see a wish list. My clients tell me, I want the unicorn out there who has 15 years of experience with X college degree requirement in a specific niche. And I tell them, if we keep the job description a little more open-ended, then we'll cast a wide net of pool, because you'll get candidates who have transferable skills. You'll get candidates who may have had some exposure. They may not be subject matter expertise, but they have enough exposure where their learning curve is not going to be so steep. Maybe they're a better fit from a culture perspective, from team management perspective, all other perspectives, but maybe their technical skill may not be as strong as someone with 10 years of experience. So just be mindful as you put the years number of experience. Don't always put the highest number. Start with a little bit lower so you can cast a net, someone who could inch up into the role, someone who's ready for their next promotion, someone who's ready for that next leap of, in their career. You could capture that personality into the role, and they may work hard for you for several years without looking for their next promotion and their next growth, because they have something that they want to accomplish. They have certain skill that they want to achieve before they can move on to their next promotion. Software experience. I cannot highlight how many times, because we're strapped for resources. Our life would be so much easier if the next person that came into the role knew the software and the technology that our organization uses. But most of the time, if you've used a software in that field, whether it's an accounting software, it's an HRS software, it's a fundraising software, you can most likely pick up another software. It may take a little learning curve in the beginning, but having a stringent software requirement will eliminate a lot of candidates from being considered. So be mindful of that. And then the last two, the last few are more having to do with logistical things. So some job requirements still have qualification that must have a car. You don't need a candidate to have a car. You just need them to have the ability to get from point A to point B. So make your job description clear that they have to have the means, to do outbound, let's say, sales calls, or they need to have the means to go meet with funders or grantees or visit offices of clients. So you can change your language, not from having a car to having transportation to able to fulfill the role that you're asking them to do. Same thing with proximity to office, being mindful if it's in a hybrid capacity, do they need to come visit the office certain times? So do they just need to have access to the office versus they need to live within a certain distance of your office? Last is, being a native English speaker can eliminate some of your immigrant population who are fluent in English, but they may not identify as a native English speaker. So being mindful of the language that you use in your job description to eliminate, required English native speaker to really someone who's fluent in English or is able to communicate with your funders or your clients, whoever your audience is, in an effective manner. Let's go through a few examples of some bad examples and of good examples of job descriptions. And I've just pulled out some little excerpts. It's not the entire job description to showcase as an example. So this job description here really just starts from the get-go, goes straight into the responsibility and qualification. And really, I'm saying that they're missing about the organization. What's compelling candidates to really want to be part of the organization? A key to getting diverse candidate is you want to appeal to people who may not necessarily say, oh, I should naturally apply for this role. Oh, I've done this all my career. You want different people of different background, of different experience to apply. And it starts for nonprofits with having a compelling organization information about your mission and your values. Next, these are two examples I wanted to highlight, and a lot of job descriptions have this. And so I don't fault for it, but I just want to show how it could limit folks who apply to this position. So this one's saying must have a minimum of 2 years experience versus saying have a minimum of 2 years experience. And this language here, prefer prior experience as director of admissions, it's a very specific niche. You're asking someone to come from higher education background in the admissions office as a director. So now your funnel of candidate is going to be very small of who's going to apply for this role. So if you're trying to expand your search and you're looking for people of different experience level of how they identify, they're not always going to fit this yes, yes, yes model here. Next example here, this one really highlights the lack of gender neutrality. And I think that it was just probably in how fast the person was typing. But if you see where it's highlighted in red, he will follow up on proposals. Perhaps the prior person in the role was someone who identified as a he, or when the person was typing it, they naturally just assumed someone who identifies as a he would do this role. But being mindful that we don't want to alienate folks who identify as other. So making sure that we eliminate this he and change it to they, or the candidate will, something that's more gender neutral. Here's an example, a good example that I wanted to showcase. This organization, and I've removed their name just for their confidentiality, but right off the beginning, they mention why work at their organization. So right off the bat, they're telling you, and they're showcasing they're so proud of their work and what they're doing and what their values are. They're clearly articulating that they're looking for someone, you know, who has empathy, someone who's going to be supportive of the environment of collaborating and leading in trust. And so right off the bat, they're telling you the environment the person would step into. And so as you're reading this, you might be like, oh, that really resonates with me. I really like that environment. And they may not have all the qualifications for your role, but enough to be appealed to like the organization, enough qualifications to apply, and then you'll get another candidate profile that's different from all the other folks that have applied with you. And this organization happened to go into their benefits. So they're really putting it out there why they're an awesome organization to work at. And so you're welcome to have some abridged version of your benefits or just a couple line. You don't have to have this much detail, but you're welcome to attract the right candidate. In this example, you know, I really like the neutrality in their language in their qualification section. So nothing was like, absolutely, you've got to have, must have. Things were, you know, a minimum of 3 to 5 year experience in the nonprofit organization. That's really open-ended. They could have worked in any issue area in nonprofit organization, in any type of position capacity. And then you're asking them, you know, obviously our preference is someone who worked with youth or education or criminal serving background. And so you're saying it's a beneficial, not that you're going to eliminate someone who comes from other, you know, issue areas, but these are the nice to have. I like this language, experience with fiscal and fundraising responsibilities. They didn't put a qualifier in the beginning that you have to have strong experience or extensive experience or seasoned experience. You know, understanding what type of the role is this? Is this an entry level, a mid-level, or senior? Having your adjectives be reflective of the level of the role is going to be so critical to attracting that right person. So just wanted to show that in the like general inclusive language that you could have. And then this example, you know, is an organization that put their diversity, equity, and inclusion statement in their job description. So this was actually towards the beginning of their job description because it's a big part of this organization. And so you can have as much as 2 paragraphs, you could have 1 paragraph, you could have a couple lines, you know, just something to really indicate to the candidate and to showcase to them that this is an important value for you as an organization. And so if that aligns with their values, then it's a good fit. So you're drawing a diverse candidate just from your job description process without even having spoken to them. Now, quickly, if you'll chat in for me, what's the one thing you are taking away maybe about your job descriptions? So if you've had a chance to just glance at your job description while we're talking, is there something that sticks out to you or something that you can incorporate? If you'll chat in for me, just so I have an indication. Okay, four-year degree. Thank you, Katie. Unconscious bias, the language. Adding the mission and vision, absolutely. I cannot highlight that. So many people eliminate that, and it's really a great selling point for you. Great. Flashing our equity statement. Yes, absolutely. If you have one, put it in your job description, because a diverse candidate will look for that. Someone who values that will look for that, and it'll make you stand out over other organizations. Great, Emily. Evaluating if cover letter is useful or not, absolutely. You know, I would say for some positions, it can be very useful. And if you make it a tailored focused question, that can actually help you weed out candidates. Great. Oh, Angela, you're doing all the things. Amazing. I love it. Great. So next, let's talk about sourcing diverse candidates. I know this is why you're all here. Where should we post? How should we post? So I look at diverse job posts in kind of four ways. And so take a snapshot of this slide deck if you need it, but you really want to identify your position into four areas. One, what's your organization's niche or industry? So are you in philanthropy? Are you on the nonprofit side? Are you in the advocacy side, fundraising side? Are you for profit? What is your niche? Because there's job boards specific for your niche. Then what type of a role are you looking for? So is it an administrative role like accounting and finance? I saw some development. I saw some board members. Is it a sales role? Is it a business development role? So what type of a role is it? So classify that. Then what level is your role? Is your role an entry level role, someone maybe fresh out of college or just starting their working career, a mid-level, a senior? Is it an executive, C-suite level? So classify which level is the position that you're hiring for. And then last is an understanding of your labor market, right? So what works in your geography? Are you in a small town? Is it easy to attract the talent pool into your market? Or are you looking for remote employees? So first, let's talk about where in each one of these categories, what's your position, okay? Because then these are some suggested job boards that I recommend that you take a screenshot of also, but you want to diversify the job boards that you post your positions on. So you don't want to just post your position on one job board and you're hoping, I hope I get a ton of diverse candidates. You want to diversify your job boards as well so that you could get a better reach, right? And so the way I take a position is I will always post on general job boards. So like LinkedIn is a great platform. It's a great professional platform. You should post, on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is free. So LinkedIn job board is free. Now with Indeed and ZipRecruiter, depending on if you use ATS system or an HR system, sometimes your positions get automatically posted on Indeed and ZipRecruiters, which are also free if you wanted to post it. The only thing I want to caveat here is if you post on Indeed and ZipRecruiter and it's a senior level positions, you may get candidates who may not be a best fit for the role. So sometimes quantity isn't equate to quality of candidates. So be mindful of that. And Katie, your questions, are most of these free to post on? No, most of these are not free to post on. The general job boards are free to post on. The other ones have some costs associated with it. And I can tell you which ones are free as we go along. Now, industry-specific job boards. So based on if you're in nonprofit, you're in philanthropy, you're in fundraising, you're in advocacy, pick a job board that's applicable for your niche. So if you're a nonprofit, Idealist is a great resource. Almost all nonprofits, philanthropy, everyone advertises on there. There is a cost associated with it, but your reach would be folks who are looking in the nonprofit or philanthropy sector. In the types of role, depending on what's your specific role, there are different job boards that'll drive different candidates to apply to your position, so increasing the diversity of your pool. So for accounting finance positions, there's a job board like I Hire Finance, accounting of nonprofit, accounting association of nonprofit professionals. There's payroll association. So these are niche job boards that are specific for accounting and finance, and you'll get folks from for-profit background and other industries. So if you're trying to get different talent onto your team, these are great platforms for that. Now, levels of roles. Here are some examples. If you're looking for an entry-level position versus all level versus C-suite or executive level, Handshake is a great platform. If you're looking for an entry-level position, they are a platform that advertises to, I think, over 30 to 40 universities across the US. So graduating students who are coming out of different programs, they'll get to see your position. So some of the positions that I saw you guys post for like associate level or assistant level or program associate level positions, those may be great for entry level candidates who are starting out their career. And then here are some lists of diverse job boards. United Latino Job Bank is complimentary. You just have to sign up for an account, but that is a free resource. But we've listed out some diverse job boards depending on, if you're looking for someone with African-American background, Latin American, Spanish, background, Hispanic background. The bottom two, Native Peoples Recruit and Native Americans in Philanthropy, I've had some clients who are really focused on someone with Native American background. So there are different job boards that are relevant to targeting specific, either gender specific or race specific or identity specific population that you can post on based on what you're looking for in your diverse candidates. And last is, how do we eliminate bias from our interview process? One is really building a diverse hiring team. And so I can't emphasize this enough. If everyone on your hiring team looks the same, has the same background, most likely they'll pick the same person. They'll pick someone who they relate to, and it's inevitable. It's human nature. And so my recommendation to you is identify people with diverse background and perspectives who will bring different insights about candidates, and really training that team, training your hiring team of how they can look for bias in the interview process. So whether it's in the language we use or who you have as part of the interview process. Next is having a rubric. So scorecards are a great way to eliminate bias from your interview process. So this is an example, and you can modify this however it's applicable to you, but it could ensure consistency in your hiring process so that you're evaluating every candidate based on the same criteria. So obviously your hiring team, your interviewers can write some comments, but then quantifiably, objectively, you're asking them to grade every candidate on the same criteria. And so all hiring teams will ever rarely agree on one candidate, right? But this one will help you narrow their decision-making, who's the best candidate, who's the most qualified, not taking into account our personal bias of, oh, this person grew up in the same, area that I grew up, or they went to the same school I went to, or they have the same professional network that I do. But this will help you to eliminate bias by having objective grading for every candidate. You can use this in two places. One is when you're reviewing resumes, you could create a scorecard and you can evaluate candidates against the scorecard to making sure you're objective, advancing the right candidates who meet the qualifications. And then you can use this after every interview as well. Give this to every interviewer, and then you can collect their feedback, and then you'll have the sheet so you can see, okay, these three candidates were below our threshold, and these two candidates are our strongest candidates, and they should be advanced to the final interview process. And then, one more tip on how do you eliminate bias from interviews is, how do you structure your interview flow? So most people, have you have somebody on your team who's an experienced person, so you just have them interview. They come up with their own questions and their flow. My recommendation, if you're the hiring manager, you're the HR professional who's really shepherding this interview process, come up with your flow. So who's going to be round one interview, who's going to do round two interview, who's going to do round three interview, and then establish interview questions for each round so that every candidate gets asked the same questions in the same order and in the same interview flow. You really want to eliminate any kind of unconscious bias that may creep in, with one interviewer having more laid back interview because they knew the person versus they're asking a lot of technical questions to another candidate. You want to keep consistency, and the one way to do that is if you can have structure around your interview questions and your interview flow of who are going to be participating in each round of the interviews. Another way that you could eliminate bias is having phone interviews for your screening part of your process. So if you utilize virtual interviews, so Zoom or Teams, to do your interviews, that's great. But in the first interview, as the screener, see if you can do those via phone, because then it'll help you get a sense of the candidate objectively without any consideration for their appearance, for their race, for their gender, what their backdrop may be, what their home conditions may be, if their lighting's so great or not. You're objectively evaluating the candidate based on the responses they give. And I think that this can help you eliminate bias by having your first initial interview done via phone versus a video interview, so that you can eliminate any factors that can impact the evaluation besides their skills, their technical skills. And then last is just train your interview team. So really having conducive training for them of how do you look for bias? What are they looking for when they're making a decision? How to set up the scorecards, and taking their input and what should be the criteria in the scorecard so that you could eliminate bias from your interview process. I hope that was helpful. I know that we're just in the last few minutes of our webinar. So I'd love to hear from you, maybe if there's something tangible that you're taking away about eliminating bias, maybe from your interview process. If you've used a scorecard before, if you think that could be helpful in your process, if you could drop me a line, I'd love to hear from you. And then Romney, if there's any questions from our team, the audience that I can answer, I'd love to open it up for Q&A. Good, I'm glad scorecards will be helpful to you, Cecilia. Scorecards have been a game changer for most of my clients. Sometimes so much time and effort goes into the debrief meeting, coordinating schedules between interviewers just so you could find out feedback. How did your interview go? But in the scorecard, it gives you immediate feedback. You ask your interviewers, please complete the scorecard by the end of the day of the interview so you can see their feedback immediately, because you want to get back to your candidates in a timely manner. You want to have fast response to them so that they consider you, they see that you're organized and you're diligent in your process. Oh, good. Emily, you adopted the scorecards during the application process. It does take a lot of time, absolutely. So make sure you have capacity, somebody on your team who can do that function. Absolutely.
Sneha, one question here from Jenna. Do you
Absolutely.
have the interviewers submit the completed scorecard to the hiring manager?
Absolutely, Jenna. So you want to pick someone who's the neutral, objective person that's running the process. So whether that's the hiring manager, you have an HR person on the team, because the interviewers need to feel comfortable that they could share their insight, their concerns, their red flags, without having any hesitation that they may get some slack or pushback about the candidate. So definitely pick the person that your interviewer should turn that scorecard into, someone who's neutral and objective in making that decision. They should upload it into the HRIS system. Yes, if you have an HRIS system, definitely use that. Eliminate the paper process, the email process. But for some of the smaller organizations who may not have it, please give it to the person who's running your hiring process. Great. Telephone interviews are great. Absolutely. I've had that happen, Barbara, for telephone interviews. Sometimes interviewers get stuck in seeing all the other things that our eyesight sees, right? What's their backdrop? Oh, is there noise in the back? There's pets or there's kids walking around. And really all those things are part of life, and they really shouldn't be taken into account for the role if they can do the role well and they can execute on the responsibilities. And so the telephone calls really eliminate that, so you can really just hear and hone in on their responses. Great. Any other questions, open-ended, that we could answer? Well, thank you so much for having us. As I mentioned, I'm with Maneva Group, and we are an executive search firm. And so if your organization wants to chat about it, is discussing any upcoming hire that we could support you in, feel free to reach out. My email is on the slide here, and you'll get this entire slide deck and the presentation next week from GrantStation as well.
Visit GrantStation to see our latest online education offerings in the form of live webinars, interactive workshops, and on-demand learning. GrantStation.com, your fast track to funding and online education.